I'd love to dive into is like an example of what that looks like, especially closing that loop when it comes to online to offline in a specific example.
This is the bigger, more complicated version. The very easy example that I'll just give first before I really dive into this is I watch an ad on my TV and then I go on the website and I do an action that matters, whether it's sign up or buy, going to a store, or maybe your phone or your computer to do that kind of purchase or, again, thing that counts towards attribution. But that's really where it gets interesting because, again, usually it's not just, oh, I saw this ad and I'm going to immediately do something about it. It looks a little bit more like this, which is I started on my phone or on a Spotify or Pandora. And then I also saw that ad on the big screen on HBO Max or whatever it might be. There's many touch points. This is something that anybody can access. How many times did they see an ad? What was that average number of exposures before they converted? How long did it take? That average number of days? And how did different channels play a part? What was effective? What wasn't? What was more effective? What that blend looks like? And this is where we've seen different examples of what works depending on the brand. But usually, pretty much always, it's a better together where we know TV is incredibly effective, but we saw when a client ran, and there's some case study, I don't think we included it here, but I'm sure we could dig it up. When a client ran connected TV and display, when they did it together with a cohesive strategy, it was significantly more effective than either in isolation. The more technical side. So when you look at this ecosystem of digital, you have a bunch of devices you're consuming on. You got a TV, you got a phone, you got a laptop. There's a bunch of different IDs associated with that. And so essentially, it's almost that simple. You're able to tie together things like a cell phone or a laptop and those identifying IDs associated with it back to the bigger household. This is a laptop that is at this household regularly, right? And differentiating between something like a coffee shop or an office and a home. There's a lot of different ways that is done. And so you're able to say, I know that this device is a part of this household, and therefore somebody saw something on this screen and then performed an action on this screen that is tied together, and it's piecing it together. I think attribution was last touch in so many ways, which is not how we work as consumers. It wasn't, I Googled something and that was the only way. I just happened to know what to Google and that's not how we operate. And so this helps tie it together. So this next slide gets a little more technical and I'll break down the components where before the actual kind of connected TV 5-10 years ago was really a big player. It was really more about individuals. You had your devices, that's how you track things. Well, a TV is different. It is in a household. Usually there's multiple people within that household. And that's how it's broken down, where you have this larger household identifier, right? So when you're, how many households did I reach? That's what it's mapping to. And again, this is something that you're going to get breakdowns of each kind of layer. How many households did I reach? How many unique people? How many unique devices? But that's how it's structured. It's to the household, to the individual, and then the devices. And all of those devices have things like device IDs and IP address and timestamp and lat long and all these different signals that allow us to tie them all together. There's a level of kind of a threshold that it has to meet, number of times we see it, like a certainty rating, if you will. But what's also great is now there's more and more what's called deterministic data, which is really like a hard, I know that this connection is exactly the same. And that's what something like a unified ID 2 is. That's something that is going big across the industry. Big partners like Disney and Sling and Paramount and all these others have started to adopt it. And essentially what it does is helps link things like email addresses and phone numbers in an anonymous, privacy safe, consumer opt-in type of way to all of these devices that you use. And so it's just building even stronger connections. And we've had some great initial results on how much better it's getting. But that's what's allowing us to tie it together. And when you look at this household graph, there's tons of things feeding into it and data being licensed to feed the beast. But a lot of it also is just based on what's coming. If you know how the internet works, your internet connection has an IP address and every device is connected to it is there. That's a very simple way of thinking about a much more complicated solution.